Welcome to the Windshield Chronicles, a mental sequence of operation.
This episode brought to you by Hudson Technologies, improving environmental quality and promoting a healthier planet through the sustainable recovery and reuse of natural sources. Learn more at hudsontech.com.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us once again on Did You Know, the Institute-HVAC podcast. So we are hanging out at the 2024 National HVACR Education Conference. So you'll hear a little background noise. That's just because we have 1,200 educators.
No way.
1,200, Kate.
That's fabulous.
Hanging out with Kate Houghton from Hudson Technologies. And we always have some amazing conversations.
It's always so much fun. Never know where it's going to start or end, but it's a great time.
Absolutely. I mean, we're sitting down. We're going, okay, I think we know what we want to talk about. Is there anything different that we want to cover? Anything we want to throw in? Because there's just so much to talk about. And right now, Hudson is at the forefront of helping us understand refrigerant transition. So Kate and I have done some really, really wonderful discussions on what the industry looks like when this whole HFC phase down, and what we're doing for recovery and reclamation. But we want to start painting a picture that doesn't always get thought of, especially from the technician side. So let's just backtrack a couple decades. I'm dating myself again. Oh my gosh.
Not me.
So as a technician out in the field, we were very strict on recovering of refrigerant, and every refrigerant had it. Now, we did commercial refrigeration, so we had a lot of refrigerants. We did residential, light commercial, AC. So, there were many a times that, I could have a dozen different refrigerants in our shop. And so we had clean cylinders of refrigerant. We had cylinders that had, burnout compressors that were labeled. So we would accumulate a variety of different recovery cylinders. And then we would go to our local supply house, and then we would, bring them in for reclamation. But that was really all that we seen of that side of the industry. And it wasn't until I got into working with educators and talking about the whole life cycle of our industry. And Kate and I were talking about, ever thought about what that cylinder does, like from its beginning of its life to its end? And I thought that'd be a wonderful conversation to have, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. I'm all in.
Okay. All right. Let's do it. So let's start out. How about we start as a fresh, brand new recovery cylinder, just came out of the manufacturing facility. What happens with that thing?
Yeah, so that can go in a couple of different directions, but really its useful life is getting into service. So generally those brand new recovery cylinders will go out through the wholesale channel. Mm-hmm. They're available for contractors to go pick up, purchase, rent, deposit. Every contractor and every wholesale relationship is slightly different.
Oh, well.
So you can kind of see that a couple of different ways. But that contractor is going to obtain that cylinder from a wholesaler. They might obtain it from their reclaim partner if they're not reclaiming. So, for example, they were reclaiming directly with something like a Hudson.
Yes.
You'll also be able to get that cylinder directly from your reclaim partner and take that and put that out on the truck. So at that point, you've got the ability to start to do your first recovery.
Yes. Okay. All right. So let's just say like we were in my scenario. So I've got my 50-pound recovery cylinder. I have now gotten enough clean refrigerant in this particular one. I put it in my van. I transport it to my local distributor, and I don't know what happens from there.
Yeah, it's like a big mystery, right? Yeah. The cylinders disappear, and a little bit later on you find out what you had. So what that local wholesaler will do will consolidate all of those recovery cylinders, the 30s, the 50s, sometimes the 125s and thousands even. Yeah. And they'll consolidate all of those cylinders. They'll get a pallet full generally. Sometimes they'll use less, but generally they'll get a pallet full of cylinders, so 40 recovery cylinders, and they'll go back to their reclaim partner. So they'll go back to the factory, every single cylinder tagged, labeled with who the contractor was, what the wholesaler was, and that'll come back in and be received into a reclaimer's facility.
Really? Okay. Mm-hmm. So we're already doing a lot of tracking of those cylinders. A lot of people talk about, the potential for having requirements for cylinder tracking going forward. Well, it's actually already being done in some ways.
It really is. And so it's really for us as industry to figure out, how do we make it easy and accessible
Yeah.
down to a technician level. But there's an awful lot of documentation going on right now about cylinders and about refrigerant and recovery.
So once that cylinder gets to your facility, how are we going to know what's in it? Because I would label mine. Like on my label for my cylinder, I had every job, what refrigerant, what date. But once it gets to you, how do you know what's actually there?
Yeah, absolutely. So we test every single cylinder every single time. So each cylinder gets a small sample drawn off that cylinder. We test for refrigerant type. We test for purity. And ultimately, we weigh the cylinder to test for weight. And we track all of that by cylinder serial number. So we have a database that goes back probably close to 30 years.
Really?
Yeah. And the key that we trigger off is the cylinder serial number, because although there's multiple manufacturers of recovery cylinders or product cylinders, even for that matter, their unique serial number, never once have we seen the same serial number from different manufacturers. So the serial number really is a unique identifier to that cylinder for its entire life.
So even if a cylinder has been retested and recertified, it's still the same serial number?
The serial number never changes. The test date changes, and you'll see that stamping, and you can see cylinders that have been retested over and over again, but the serial number is a constant throughout that cylinder's life.
I never realized that. I always assumed that once a cylinder was retested, it got reserialized.
No.
So we've been tracking cylinders for their entire lifespan.
Exactly. Yep. And we can go back in our database and actually see the same cylinder come back over and over. We can tell you what refrigerant was in it last time we got it and the time before that.
Oh,
funny.
Wow. The analytical nerd in me would be, okay, where have you been in your lifetime?
Trust me, there's rabbit holes I go down as well.
I bet. I can see that, especially if one comes back and something's questionable about it. You go, might have to see where you actually have been on your journey here recently.
Yep, exactly.
All right. So we'll get our cylinder in, we will test it, we'll analyze, see what we actually have, and then what's going to be next step.
Yeah. So then depending on the purity and the refrigerant, it's going to go in different directions in the plant, left, right, straight ahead. Those cylinders will be emptied. So we'll recover all the refrigerant out of that. We're going to pull that down to vacuum. So we're going to get every ounce of everything out of that cylinder. And then it's going to go one of two ways. That cylinder's going to go one of two ways. So if it needs hydro certification, and so we recertify every cylinder within a certain period of time, so it has some useful life. So if it needs hydro recert, it's going to go to the left, let's say, and go down the hydro path. If the hydro date is fine and it can be put back into circulation, it's going to go right and go to the paint line. We're going to repaint every single cylinder, fresh coat of paint.
Now, what about the insides of them? Are they cleaned in that process or?
Yes. So that's a great question. We get it a lot. So through the recovery process, we're going to pull down vacuum, but because the contaminants like a little bit of oil, a little bit of moisture, a little bit of particulate aren't going to affect the purity of the refrigerant, the recovery cylinder doesn't have to be pristine. So it's not recertified to brand new conditions, but here's the catch. You can't use that cylinder to re-inject refrigerant because you can inject contaminants. So a recovery cylinder is literally for the recovery of refrigerant and transfer to a reclaimer. It's not for recovery and re-inject.
True. Absolutely. Definitely not for resale, which is part of the reason we've had a lot of concerns in industry when we start talking about refillable cylinders. You have people going, we can just we can take the supply of existing recovery cylinders. Well, that's not true, because then every single one of those would have to be almost recreated. They would have to be run through a completely different process. Okay. All right. So now we've verified our test date. So if it is expired, we're going to get recertified. If it is not, we're going to be ready to send back out into the industry. And how do they get distributed?
Yeah, absolutely. So hydro tested, painted, palletized, under vacuum, and then sent back out to where they came from.
Okay.
So we do a like-for-like swap, and that would be pretty typical in most of the industry. So we're depending on how much cylinder the wholesaler sent in, we're going to send back like-for-like cylinders. So a pallet of 40 comes in, a pallet of 40 goes back out.
So there's a very good chance I could actually end up back with a cylinder that I have sent in.
It's possible. What happens, though, for the technician, when they drop that cylinder off at the wholesaler, they're going to walk out with a fresh cylinder.
Right.
So they're going to keep swapping so that they can go to that next recovery job. So the cylinder is likely could likely go back to that wholesaler, but you may not get it back to the same technician.
Okay. All right.
And the cylinder fleet, just to put in perspective, is at Hudson, hundreds of thousands of cylinders. Yeah. So it doesn't necessarily go back to the same wholesaler. It's going to go back to a wholesaler.
I gotcha. Okay. All right. Yeah, that's very interesting. So, a lot of times we just don't think about that entire journey of that cylinder. Mm-hmm. So going forward, we have a huge emphasis on reclamation. Is our industry prepared? Do you think we have enough cylinders in supply to do a continual recirculation of our HFCs, in particular, that's out in the industry?
So that's a great question. If you had to ask me that question 2 or 3 years ago, I would say no, because there was a steel shortage, COVID pandemic. It was really, people were getting turned away. They couldn't get cylinders. All of that has come back around. There's ample cylinders in the marketplace.
Nice. Okay.
It's not an impediment at this point. Cylinders are not an impediment.
I have had a very interesting topic come up here internally, particularly about our A2L recovery cylinders. Mm-hmm. So some manufacturers saying that they're going left-handed thread for sure. Some saying it's undetermined yet, so we're not making a statement on that. Are you seeing A2L recovery cylinders coming back in yet?
Yeah, also a great question. So we are seeing A2Ls come back in, but a dedicated designed A2L cylinder, not yet.
Yes.
So we're recommending anyone who has A2Ls, because they are in circulation and they are coming back. So we have flammable tags.
Yep.
We ask anybody returning cylinders to make sure that we know that there's flammable refrigerants on the shipment,
right.
And to call out that cylinder on the pallet. But so far, we have not seen A2L recovery cylinders become available in the marketplace.
Yeah, we're kind of the same way. We've found some available, but we've also seen some what I would call counterfeit recovery cylinders.
And we have too.
Have you really?
And it's a real problem because they don't meet DOT.
No.
They're undersized. Yeah. So if you use the 80% fill ratio, you're overfilling them, and they are very dangerous to transport.
Thinking about that,
because they claim that they're a 30-pound cylinder, but when you put them side by side, the water capacity and the cylinder size, they're much smaller. Oh. So if you filled it to your 80% rule, you are overfilling that cylinder, and it could potentially become a missile. It's very dangerous.
Oh, Ty Branneman is going to love to know that, because he's actually been running down that rabbit hole trying to see what is coming to the industry and making sure to point out the what we are now calling counterfeit cylinders. I mean, we've found recovery cylinders that have like shutoff valves on them.
Correct.
Yeah.
We're actually issuing some updates this week in terms of what to look out for. There's a lot of information coming out in the industry very, very quickly. But I suffice to say, if somebody's offering you a recovery cylinder and it seems like a really great deal, it's probably too good to be true.
Like everything in life, if it sounds too good to be true, it's probably because
it is.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's really cool. I'm so glad that you clarified that, because we're all going to spend a lot more time focusing on recovery and reclamation and understanding our role in that process. And I think it helps paint a better picture. And hopefully in the future, we're going to do a road show, and we're going to actually show what some of those processes look like.
I can't wait to have you at our Champaign plant and show the world how we actually handle those cylinders and then how we go about it.
I love it. We keep talking about this evolution of education right now, and I know you in particular are very, very forefront in education. What educational resources do we have to connect with Hudson and to learn about where our industry is right now?
Absolutely. We have a lot of information on our website, hudsontech.com, in terms of sustainability, reclaim, handling A2Ls. So there's a wealth of information on our website. Check it out.
All right. Fantastic. Any other things you'd like to cover while we're here today?
Well, I'm really excited to talk about HFCs and the phase down later on this afternoon here. And, it's great. It's a great turnout, Clifton. It's a really great turnout.
Yeah, there's so many people here. And you that are joining us today, we're so glad that you're spending some time hanging out. I wish you were here with us. And we hope that you're here next year to spend some time one-on-one with every educator from the industry that is putting their heart and soul into keeping all this information forefront, just like you are, Kate.
I would say it's one of my favorite conferences. I wouldn't miss it every year. It's great.
Yeah, it's what got me hooked in doing the things that I do now when I came here in 2019. So it looks like it's getting pretty crazy out there.
It is. I think we're heading right into another session. So
I think we are. So that's wonderful. I sure appreciate you joining us, and we look forward to see what the class is. And I encourage everyone to reach out to your local distributors. See if they're using Hudson. Learn a little bit more about Hudson and find them at Hudson.
HudsonTech.com.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.